Hey guys, Jared here, and today I'm going to be starting a new series on the channel. I'm going to call it Know Your Matchups. So I wanted to make this video earlier, but I wanted to wait for the weekend of both Niagara and Ghent to pass, so we can get a better firm meta-analysis of what's going on. So as you can see by the top 32 breakdowns, that Orcus seems to be the highest represented deck, and I'm going to be going through a majority of each deck that topped, and then use the current deck for the specific video and go through what each card in the deck can do to help in that matchup, because you want to play your deck differently depending on the matchup that you're in. So we're going to be going by most representation, and to start out, that's going to be Orcus. Before I get into the Orcus deck, I wanted to say that when you play this deck, a lot of people have a problem where they just shotgun their draw cards like Duality and Desires and Upstart Goblin and stuff like that. When they have the option to summon one of these on turn 0, like on your first turn of the duel, if there's an option to summon one of these before you actually start drawing your cards and getting the advantage, you do it every time, because it's just going to get you value. Like, one of my favorite plays is to be able to summon Ignis before I Desires, because it's going to get the value even if they Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs me, and it's essentially the same value, because you're just going to draw a card off the heritage that you get. So that would definitely be a recommendation for me, that to anybody playing this deck, that if you have the option to summon one of these before, definitely do it. So since we're starting with Orcus, because it is the most represented deck in both of the North American and European YCSs, we are going to start off by just going through all the cards of the Draco deck and what is good, what's bad, how you want to play the cards. So obviously, a good start is obviously you want to rush to the floodgates. I know that's what everyone thinks, it's the best thing to do, how to beat the deck, etc., etc. I will say this one, there can only be one, is not that great against the deck. If you can side it out, you play more games sided than unsided, so I do not like this card against the deck. It's not very good, so I would take it out. Monarch's Erupt is very, very, very strong. It's the one matchup that I think Soul Drain would be very, very strong in, but it's only as good if you can back it up with Erupt or Skill Drain, because otherwise they just make Nightmare Phoenix and destroy your Soul Drain anyway, so there's a lot of redundancy in it. Judgment, I think, is a very unique card in the matchup, specifically because you can negate the summon of Dingirsu, and if you do, they can't revive it back with Symbol Skeleton. It kind of puts them in this awkward position where they have to make another one, and God forbid you have two of these, they never can make Dingirsu again for the rest of the game. And I think Solemn Strike is a very strong card in the Draco deck for going second. So if you do decide to play this specific deck at an event, I highly recommend Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgment for hitting the Dingirsu on the summon. Rushing the Monarch's Erupt, I think it's the strongest piece, because if you're going to go Soul Drain, Erupt is the one that's going to, they kind of accomplish the same thing of not being able to play. Now, getting into the Draco cards themselves, the best thing about them is that if you have Diagram up with any of these, that they can't beat over your cards easily, because they all get at least tied to Dingirsu with Diagram up, and they can't just beat over them. So OTKing you is actually quite a hassle for the Orcus deck to accomplish, especially when you have cards like Return and Apocalypse to back you up. The spell cards don't do too much when you're going second. That's when they really, really shine, because you can start popping things like the Crescendo and stuff like that, or the Babel if they decided to go that route. That was probably one of my shining moments at the event of Philadelphia Regionals. You would go second, and then they would make a board, and if they don't go the Crescendo route, they leave Dingirsu in Graveyard. And if you just set a card, they kind of have to react to it, because it could be a spell card, and if you just tribute off for one of the monsters, you can activate the spell card to destroy the Babel, and even if they chain Symbol Skeleton to bring back the Dingirsu and attach, the way the chain resolves is that this will destroy the Babel beforehand, and then you can even chain your Draco monster to get the free value out of it. Especially if it's Ignis, that's the best one to do it with. So it's kind of like you just broke the board, but you didn't actually do anything. You just played your deck correctly, and you just annihilated the board. Now, if they decide to go the other route, which is where they end with Crescendo, Guy on board, And I know there's some Cyber Dragon Orcus, as we can see here, that's been gaining popularity, Winaway Orcus. There's a lot of different Orcus that end on different things, but I think Draco has a very good shot at beating most of them. The most annoying thing is Deer and Girsu with 3 materials, which I will say is very, very frustrating to play against, but it is definitely breakable. If you go second, probably the best way to do it, if you, like I said, if you play Solemn Strike, you can literally just go Erupt Strike and summon monster, because you don't leave them anything to negate with anyway, and then they can't get over it. They're stuck because the monsters are just too strong and big, especially if you have a True Draco Apocalypse to back it up. Getting into grinding with Orcust, I will say that is very, very annoying to deal with things like Crescendo, Galatea, and things like that, because they have a really, really good grind game. So that's where cards like Disciples come in really clutch, even Return if you can keep looping it to get back cards. But there's got to be a point in the game where if you're grinding and they're grinding and they keep recycling Dingirsu, they are going to eventually break through all your cards. If you don't have something like one of these, you have to be able to turn off that Dingirsu eventually, and that's the best way to beat Orcust, I'd say. If you're going first, you already know, just set up the floodgates. If you play Summon Limit works too. Just any way to stop them from going in. Going second's where it gets tricky. That's where all the technical things come in. And I think Lancey is one of the strongest ways to stop that, because you just have to stop them for one turn. Once you stop them for that one turn, you just instantly set it up, and then that's it. They're pretty much just lose the game from there. And yep, that's probably how I would go against Orcust. The next most represented deck on the list was going to be Sky Striker, coming in at 7 and 6. And everyone knows Sky Striker is that grind deck that can really, really outgrind any deck in the meta. But I will say that Draco is the one deck that will outgrind it every time, as long as you know how to play it correctly. This is where the deck itself really, really matters. All these cards come in very, very clutch. This helps, but this helps, this helps. You know, they're not game-breaking. Erupt's the best one. Like, it turns off all the monsters, so it helps so much. This, I would side this. I wouldn't even activate this card, because you really, really win the matchups from the monsters themselves. You need the value of every monster to get from every turn to be able to outgrind the deck. Now, that's just the start up. After you get, like, let's say Erupt going, they have things like Afterburner or Jamming Wave and stuff like that, and Widow Anchors. The deck will only beat you if you allow yourself to get multiple Widow Anchored, and then they summon a guy like a Ray, and then they go for a game in one shot. As long as that doesn't happen to you, you will literally beat Sky Striker every time. The deck really is not strong anymore. I bricked one time, and I just told my opponent to pass, and he couldn't just kill me. He just, did Sky Striker stuff. Hayate hit, Kagari got back engaged, set some stuff past, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. All I had to do was just pop multi-roll with one of these. That's just free. Summon a guy, popped another card in the back row, chain Widow Anchor, sure, chain guy, chain second Widow Anchor. It's like, alright, I just took out like 4 cards. I didn't even have to think about it. If you have Erupt up, it's really, really nice when they have a Link monster, and you just go, okay, set trap card, tribute for guy, pop the Link, they use Ray, comes back. Most of the time they use Ray and it comes back. Smart players won't, but when they do, you activate their effects to get the free value off of it. As soon as they do that, you just swing over with your Draco monster. They're probably going to use the Ray, because it does dodge Erupt, so they can use the Ray still. Get another Link monster, but they just lose value. They just lost their part of their grind game, because you just beat over it anyway. And Ray won't be activated. You can't activate, because it already used it this turn. So, the Draco deck naturally just beats it. As long as you're playing your cards conservatively, you don't have to worry about dying. The only way you're going to lose, like I said, if you just play recklessly, I think the perfect number of monsters, honestly, could just be 1, as long as you're tributing traps. And if you go for multiple, I think you're just beneficial to summon 3 at once. Go from 1 on one turn, and then go 2, 3 on the second turn. Because then Widow Anchoring OTKing you is so hard. And then, God forbid, they try doing it, you can even go Apocalypse. And that's like a deep save, because, they have Ray, you just use this, they Widow Anchor one of your guys. You can't be afraid to Apocalypse destroy your monster to cut their guys in half, so that you don't lose for a turn. Because I'm telling you, as long as your life points don't hit 0, you're gonna win. Overall, this deck will outgrind the deck. It will win every time. You just, like I said, just have to know how to play these cards right. Get as much maximized value as possible. Don't let this die. This is the #1 card. I decked out Sky Striker with this card because you just loop 2 of them and some monsters and 1 other trap or spell. You will not lose. And yep, that's probably how I would play against Sky Striker. There's really nothing else really much to it. You can side in things like Imperial Order, but yeah, it's really that simple. You will just outvalue them every time. Next up in this list, looks like it's going to be Salamangreat with 4 here and 2 here, so that's a total of 6. And when you go against Salamangreat, this is probably the most tricky one because strictly of Foxy, that card is such a headache for you. It will mess you up in so many different ways, and you really got to figure out how to play around Foxy and Heat Leo. Those 2 are the cards that will screw you because you can Foxy this away, and then they go to the Heat Leo combo and get rid of any other back row you have, and you're just kind of stuck in this weird position. So you have to find ways to dodge that. It's one of the scenarios where I think Soul Drain will come in very, very clutch. That's the matchup where this will be very strong. You want them to summon something that isn't Foxy, then flip this. Like, don't get greedy with it. You just want to keep Foxy out of the grave as long as possible. And then as soon as they're stuck, that's when you like maximize punishment. You can even end turns without playing a monster. And there's times where you can set up an OTK in this deck. Because you can do that. You can set up an OTK. You have 3 normal summons in a turn. If you have double spell, extra card, that's an OTK. If you just get 3 monsters, like every time with Diagram, it's gonna happen. You can just straight kill them in a turn. And you gotta be really smart about it though. You can't rush it. You just have to know what you're doing when you're playing the deck. When you lock them out with this. Like, this isn't, like, don't get me wrong, obviously this card's insane against Salamangreat, but it's only as insane as if you play it right. So if they go, say, even Gazelle, let's say the best one, then you don't have to chain this. You wait for them to dump, say, the dump Spinny or something. They summon it back. Then you can. That's the one time I'll say you get greedy because that Spinny's going to get banished and they lose the value off of it. But once they're locked into that Spinny or Gazelle, you can just sit. Monsters aren't even relevant at that point because all you're just trying to do after that, I'd say, like, they don't have real cards. They just have Rage and Roar, and those aren't even going to be live. So if they're not live, they can just die. Like, they're not going to stop you. You're not going to link summon. They can't drop Phantasma. You're not summoning more than 5 times. They can't affect Veil you and permanence you. You're just going spell, tribute, pop, and then they die. That's it. There's nothing else to it. So yeah, that's probably how I beat Salamangreat half the time. Sometimes you even just outvalue them if you just stuff them at the right moments. Like, a lot of times they can just go normal summon, Sound Judgment, normal summon. Their turn can just end half the time if they don't have will, because that's just how the deck works. They don't have anything. You have to have, like, it has to be will or Monster Reborn or Soul Charge or some other extender that isn't, I don't even know. Like, you can't beat it. Like, Solemn Judgment normal summon is so strong against, like, this and Sky Striker. I forgot to mention that. If you Solemn Judgment Ray, it can just end their turn as well. But yeah, like, it's just insane of how good some of these cards are, of just what they can do. So yeah, I mean, side decking wise, you obviously just want to play things like Soul Drain. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, it's a hard matchup. It is. Once they get Foxy going, and a smart Salamangreat player will put Foxy in grave as fast as possible against you because of just how much value it will occur as long as the game goes on. So you do want to end the game as fast as possible with putting pressure by the spells. But, like, I could even recommend, if you flip there can only be one, you put, let's say, an Ignis Heat in defense mode, and then with Diagram up, they can't out it because they can only have one monster, so they're going to be stuck with this on the board, and it's going to keep getting the spells you need over time, and then you just Diagram for the other monsters that you need to win the game, and then you can just blow them outright, probably within turn 2 at like maximum with that, or even turn 1 if you're really just lucky. So I mean, that's really all it is to it. You just gotta know how you're doing it, know how to stop them, and yeah, that's what I would do against a Salamangreat deck. The one thing I did forget to mention about the Salamangreat deck is if they start rushing into their Balanxes to stop cards like Apocalypse and Return from destroying their cards, that can be very, very annoying. But it's usually fine because the Salamangreat monsters are mostly small anyway. So when you do start making that push, just beating over their monsters just for chip damage is like will do enough as it is because of how big your monsters are themselves. Like it's just so strong of what you can do. But Phalanx is definitely a problem. Foxy is a problem. Stuff like that. Like you have to be ready for it. And when they establish the board going second, you even like just these two by themselves. If they set one back row or two back row, like you can play around the rage sometimes if you just have monster spell, monster trap. But like if they have Phalanx, that's a problem obviously because you can't get around the monster trap doesn't work in that scenario. But if it's only wolf, you can go monster trap, summon, attack over the monster, and then they have to use whatever on it. And say they got roar, they might try to activate something like redundant for you to chain this to, so that they can roar it. So for instance, if you go summon maiden, tributing apocalypse, pop the sunlight wolf, you go like enter battle phase, you can go like attack into the wolf, and then they go, we'll say impermanence on this, and you're like, okay, well why would they impermanence on it? And you just want to get the free value and you want to chain the maiden. There's scenarios where you don't want to chain the monsters because you know that they're just going to bait into something. So they can use the roar while it's live. But if you just let it happen, it's like, okay, sure, my maiden's negated. Still attack over your sunlight wolf. The wolf will just die half the time. And then the maiden's still going to be there to get the same value it would have gotten that you got greedy on for the next turn. So there's like, don't get greedy on these when you don't need to be. Like, if there's a risk, don't take it. Cards like Ghost Ogre really will show where that greed can happen. Like, yeah, Ghost Ogre on Diagram's good. Ghost Ogre on Heritage is good. Ghost Ogre on Disciples is good. But sometimes if you have Erupt and you get greedy and you activate these and they ogre your monster, sometimes you just can't summon another one and you're just beat. You're dead in the water, and it can even kill your Erupt half the time. So you really got to be smart with how you use these monsters. And Salamangreat, I think, is the perfect matchup where they main deck Roar, where you really got to watch out for that. And Solemn Strike is another big one where you'll go like Tribute spell, target back row, and then you target up like one back row, and then they chain another back row. Let's say they use rage, target this, and you just like you're like, okay, fine, whatever. You don't want anything happening to this. Like, I shouldn't say rage. I should say like impermanence or effect veiler or anything like that. And you're like, well, sure, that's fine. Like, I don't care if you impermanence or effect veiler me. I'm not going to chain this. I'm just gonna I want that pop to resolve. That's what you care about, is the pop itself. And then you can make the pushes. So that's how I would deal with Salamangreat, listing the specific cards themselves. And moving on from Salamangreat, we are going to go to Thunder Dragon, which is right here. And there's 4 that topped in Europe, but only 1 in America. But it's still represented, so we're still going to go over it. And I know that many people think that Draco has a very hard time with Thunder, which it does. I'm not going to deny that. Colossus hurts, stops a lot of stuff. Like, being able to stop Diagram hurts like so much in this deck. But there is ways where you can play this deck and you can maneuver around Colossus and Titan and things like that. So obviously the God card, Monarch's Erupt again. Like, that's why this card's so good. It's just so good against everything. But, you know, this is the MVP against these. Beat over all the Thunder Dragon fusion monsters without any problems. This card's good. It's not the best, but, you know, it's definitely good. But cool interactions that happen will be like if they go multiple Colossus on you. Like Apocalypse, like I beat a Thunder player because I just kept chopping his Colossuses in half and he couldn't do anything with them. Like, he just had to wink them off into some like not good play. Like, he pretty much had to make an unoptimal play because I kept making his Colossuses less and less relevant, and I was able to just keep hitting them, and he was like just losing resources overall. So he had to get rid of them for like something different, and then he just like fell right into, you know, other problematic cards that I was playing. Now, a lot of the times when you have a bunch of back row, Colossus can be a problem, or you have a dedicated board already, Colossus can come out and just like screw you over. But what's cool is these Draco cards are like super strong against Colossus. So if they do it, you know, they summon Colossus, and then let's say they use Thunder Dragon, the original one. It's like, okay, well, you can chain Dynamite, get a guy. Then they can't use Titan, I mean. So that prevents one pop, and then they say they use another Thunder Dragon to try to use Titan again. And then you can use the Apocalypse you just got, and you can even pop the same Dynamite, and then that prevents another pop. I mean, you popped your guy, but now the Titan's only down to, 1600 attack, so it's like nothing. Like, it doesn't bother you. It's literally just a normal monster now, pretty much. And there's interactions like that throughout the entire Draco lineup. Like, this itself stops 2 pops by itself. This prevents 2 pops by itself. These each prevent 1 pop. Like, it's so good of what they can do and how well they go, where it doesn't even matter because the Titans, like, as long as you have a board, Titan will never resolve ever. So, I mean, like I said, Colossus hurts, but, I think being able to prevent Titan and getting over the Colossus with Erupt is probably the best way to go. For siding, I would definitely recommend things like Lancia when you're going second. I would highly recommend playing Sphere Mode in this deck now. I don't think that Nibiru is the right way to go with this. It doesn't seem correct. Like, people are playing around it with Cyber Dragon Orcus and stuff, so I definitely would recommend raw Sphere Mode. It's definitely more consistently will go through. It doesn't activate. They can't, expect you to play around it. Like, it's gonna hit them, and when it does, it's gonna hit them hard, because you have extra normal summons. You can still make a push after, make a board. Like, the only thing you have to do after you Sphere Mode them is pretty much go Spell, Guy, Erupt. Game's over. Like, most decks just lose to that. So, like, if you play against Orcus, they have Crescendo, but it doesn't matter because you have Erupt up now, and you broke the board. If they go against Thunder Dragon, like I just said, break the board, Erupt, done. Game ends. Striker, you don't want to put up Sphere Mode against Striker, but like I said, Erupt is what stops the value. Salamangreat, hit him, drop the Floodgate, it'll stop them like every time. All you have to do is get to that initial first push, and then that'll be it. Cards like Dark or No More, I think that's really, really strong card in this deck. You have to find the right place for it. Like, once you get through the generic negate that most decks have, like Crescendo, Roar, or like Zephyr Divine Strike, stuff like that, the Draco deck can excel when you just open up, like, say, Card of the Demise, because they have to use the extra negate on a card like that, and then you just, like, punish them. It's like, okay, well, I just draw 3 cards now, and then, you just push through with just not even, like, you just out-advantage them pretty much. Like, you can get through, like, the negates and then out-advantage them afterwards, which is, like, kind of crazy for a deck to do. And cards like Demise and Dark Roller No More are really good because they say you can't inflict battle damage, or battle damage becomes 0, or whatever it is. So you can still, like, you're still making the board, and you're still beating over their guys as you're, like, assembling, like, this strong board. Like, you're making a board of your own, turning off their, like, it's so crazy how this deck can break their board, still attack, and make its own board, like, all at the same time, while gaining advantage, while doing it. It's just, like, absurd in a natural way. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, Thunder's a problem, but it's definitely not, like, this unwinnable matchup that people say that it is. And yeah, that would be the way I would beat Thunder Dragon. And lastly, I'm going to go over just generic back row decks, because there's a couple on here, but I'm not going to go through these, like, independently, like Altergeist. Like, it's around, but, like, I'm not going to go too in-depth. Like, the Draco cards kind of themselves will just beat back row decks. Like, these cards are so good. Just, it forces everything out while you're gaining advantage at the same time. Your opponent doesn't want to react to things, and it's just a matter of, like, how you advantage yourself. So, like, that's how you beat back row decks pretty much. And stuff like Grand Maju is really interesting, actually, this matchup, because if you, like, obviously, like, these stop the Grand Maju, but a card like Apocalypse comes in really, really clutch against that matchup. So say they drop a Grand Maju for 10,000 attack points, but then they attack you directly, and then you have, like, Apocalypse and say a spell. You can at least Apocalypse, chop the Grand Maju in half with by popping the spell, and the Grand Maju will get cut in half to, say, 5,000. But if they banish more cards, say they have, like, Gizmek in their hand, and they want to use it, after you cut it in half with Apocalypse, the Gizmek banished 8 won't increase the attack of Grand Maju anymore. It will stay at that chopped, in whatever that attack points were when it was cut in half, it will stay there permanently, no matter how many more cards get banished. So it's super, super good. It's just one of the interactions that this card has that, like, really makes it what it is. And yeah, I think that pretty much goes over everything. Like, Subterror is, like, pretty much free, because, like I said, the back row just goes away from the True Draco spells. Like, sometimes the True Draco engine itself can just blow out matchups just because of how generically good they pop cards in the back row. I think that's pretty much everything for all the decks that I was going to go over. I mean, most of these are as combo decks, and when you go first, you just set up the floodgate. Going second, you just blow up their board with the Draco spells and traps, being able to bait out just enough negates to be able to flip over the Erupt on turn 2, and then you just push through from there. So I think that's all the decks that we were going to go over for this video, and I hope you guys enjoy. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This isn't the optimal way I want to be recording these videos. Right now I have to do everything on my phone, but I will be getting a PC shortly. As you can see, I have my whole desk set up here. I got my mouse and my keyboard. In the next couple of months, I'm going to be buying a PC with a webcam, and we're going to be doing this a lot differently. But for now, this is the way I have to do it off my iPhone. And so bear with me for a while, but I'm trying to get the information out there. I'm still trying to get more confidence in my voice and when I talk, but it's a lot of ideas in my head and a lot of thoughts, and I want to be able to put it out there for you guys. So I hope you guys liked the video. I hope you learned something. That's what that's my goal for this channel. I want people to learn from this, like have some useful information. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed.